Did you know that sometimes you don't have to do anything when your kids do something wrong? Like you don't have to give them any consequences at all. But haven't you been told that consequences are important for a child to learn a lesson? I know what you're going through. I had 9 children, and I know sometimes figuring out how to handle children's misbehaviors, what kind of consequences to enact and all, can be really challenging. What I learned is there are 2 basic types of consequences. So if you can categorize those 2 in your mind, you will have a better idea of whether you need to take action or not. And it's really great when you don't have to impose any at all, isn't it? The 2 types of consequences are natural and imposed. Natural means the consequence happens without any parental action. Imposed means that the parent will need to take some action with or without the cooperation of the child in order for the child to learn. It's the natural ones that you can leave alone, and basically the only thing you need to do is show empathy afterwards. The imposed ones need to be thought out carefully so that it will teach them a lesson, but it also will not damage your relationship or break their spirit. So my son's out there in the kitchen right now getting his breakfast. He's making all kinds of noise. Ah! It makes making videos very difficult. The most important part of the natural consequence is that the parent just doesn't get in the way. Another important part of consequences, whether they be natural or imposed, is being able to, as a parent, separate your emotions from allowing your child to learn some hard lessons. And that's not easy to do. I realize that. I know how you feel. You have empathy for your baby and you don't want any hard lessons to have to be learned, but really that's really what's going to be best for them in the end. And when I say the word baby, I mean any age child. I have grown babies. So in order to do what's best for your child, sometimes you need to hurt for them and with them as they go through that instead of rescuing them from it. For example, if your child forgets to take their lunch to school on a day, the natural consequence is that they just will not get lunch that day. When the parent intercedes or gets in the way and takes the lunch to school for them, they don't learn that lesson and they will likely forget their lunch again and again because they have no consequence that teaches them to take responsibility for themselves. The natural consequence of not having the lunch that day is a lesson that will prompt them not to forget the next day. That will be a lesson learned. This is a time when you can show them you care by having a small snack ready for when they come home and then just telling them you're sorry they missed lunch that day. This builds your relationship but doesn't interfere with the natural consequence they needed to experience to learn a lesson. You can figure out if a natural consequence is going to be effective by thinking out what will happen if you just leave it alone, and thinking about whether or not this would be sufficient to teach them a lesson without your interference. When a natural one will not be sufficient, for example, when they don't do their household chores, which I call family contributions, or they talk back, or they hit their brother or sister, this is when you need to use imposed consequences. In those cases, there may not be a natural consequence that will do the trick to teach them a lesson. So you'll need to know more about the basics of how to choose an appropriate and effective consequence that will not damage your relationship, and it will teach them a lesson without breaking their spirit. You can find another short video that tells all about how to do this by clicking on the card on the screen now. Parents, if you're struggling, something needs to change and you can do this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.